Hello. Today I will be featuring the Soviet Tier 10, the Khabarovsk. Now, this ship has actually been quite hard for me to find a good build that I actually liked because, well, a lot of the perks have been changed around and the old 3x4 build, it simply didn't feel as good as it used to, mostly because of the nerfs to both Demolition Expert and the nerfs to Survivability Expert. So two of the perks that used to be the staples of the old 3x4 build, it's kind of lost that strength. However, and of course there's the addition of RPF, which means DDs are a lot better at homing in at you as well. So there's been a lot of changes and I've had some trouble finding the perfect build. But I do believe that I found a build that I quite enjoy, and I've been testing it, and it feels very strong. It does require you to change your playstyle a bit. Now, first of all, Concealment Expert, I tried it. Still doesn't feel worth it on the Khabarovsk because you spend so much time firing, so much time spotted anyway. It's just not worth it. And Survivability Expert, the nerfed one, I didn't consider it worth it. I mean, it's a nice bonus, but ultimately you can do without. RPF, simply not worth it because, well, you're gonna be outspotted by most enemy DDs regardless, and it's only if you manage to use terrain to ambush them and stuff like that. And ultimately, I did not consider it the perk to be worth it on the Khabarovsk. I still like it on my gearing, I like it on my Shima, I like it on my Z52, but on the Kaba, it just doesn't feel worth it. So what exactly is this new build? Well, I've evolved my old 3x4 build into a 4x3 build, which is, well, not really intentional that it happened to evolve that way, but it is pretty amusing. Well, first of all, this game, our Yugoma is, I don't know what he's doing. Well, I'm of course not charging into the caps because as a Soviet DD you should rarely, if ever, be the first one into the caps. The only reason to go first into the caps if you're one of the only DDs or the only DD, and in this case there was a Yugoma. I was planning on supporting him, but then he decided to go full suicide, so I have no idea what he's doing. And instead I move over to C, where our gearing is, to see if I can support him instead. The gearing has left a nice smoke for me, which I will use. Anyway, over to the build. Another thing you might notice is that I actually have 4 smokes. And that's part of what I meant that you have to change your playstyle a bit. That's because this build actually uses Superintendent. So you have access to another smoke, which means this build is less about moving about and shooting and more about actually using your smokes to stop and open up fire on your enemies. And you can see how quickly I spot these torps. That's because this build also uses vigilance, and that's of course if you're going to do a build that involves a lot of sitting in smokes, well, vigilance is pretty much a must-have. Of course, it's not just for sitting in smokes that vigilance is useful. The Kaba, of course, is quite... Wait, but the Zao behind me died to those torps? Wow. Anyway, oh shit, that completely made me lose track. If you're going to on the Kaba, you kind of want vigilance regardless, because the ship tends to glide. It's so fast that when you turn, it's so big and so fast that when you turn, your ship tends to glide, and that's pretty awkward. If you try to turn and avoid torps, your ship tends to glide into them, and that's why I've often or always pretty much recommended running vigilance on this ship, because it makes it much easier to avoid those torps. Also, I'm exceptionally good at eating really random torps, hence why I really like having vigilance in my build. Damage wise though, this is actually one of the few DD builds where I don't run Adrenaline Rush. That's because this one takes damage, the damage sources from 2 different forms. That is basic firing training, 10% reload to guns and 20% AA, and Demolition Expert, as you can see all the fires I'm starting here. So you get, once again, as it said, the 4x3 build means you get 4 3-point perks, which means you get basic firing training, you get Superintendent, you get Demolition Expert, and you get Vigilance. In fact, the only tier 4 perk you're getting is AFT for the gun range, and of course for the AA range. And once again, as mentioned, I pop my smoke, I move slightly forward to increase the size of the smoke, of course, and of course to increase the duration of it. As I explained in my Kutuzov vid, if you sit still in a smoke, then you'll get the shortest amount of smoke possible. You want to kind of keep moving. There's some radar cruisers on my left. I'm keeping an eye on them. It's very possible I might be radared soon. I'm not too worried about it. Once again, vigilance kicking in, spotting the incoming torps, which is of course why I run this perk. And you can see the amount of fires I'm getting. The Kaba with Demolition Expert and basic firing training is one of the best fire starters in the game. You constantly start fires. And that's of course one of the reasons why I don't like running IFHE on this build or on the ship in general, because I don't want to give up this amazing fire chance for really anything. Yes, your HE won't do that much damage, but you compensate more than enough with all the fires you start. And if you really want to punish punish broadside ships, then you can just switch to AP, which does a very nice consistent amount of damage. And that's me being radared, so I just start moving away. Have to maneuver a bit because the gearing torped. Oh, it's the Des Moines that's radaring me. Sleeping into the gearing smoke, changing my course. That was a bit too early on the repair, honestly. That's because I didn't realize it was the Des Moines radar, but I am able to outrun it without any issues. Still, you shouldn't repair quite that early, because there's a high chance I could have eaten some broken module, or could have gotten set on fire, or something just really awkward could have happened right there at the end. Of course, I run last stand, so it wouldn't have killed me, but I would have lost an unnecessary amount of HP. Regardless, I'm far enough away from the Des Moines that I don't really fear his attempts to shoot at me. I mean, he might get some hits, but it's unlikely to be that big of a hit. So instead, I start working on the Grosse Kurfürst. Now it's, what, 7 minutes into the game, and I already have Witherer, and that's of course why I really love having the high fire chance on the Kaba, because, well, it's a fantastic fire starter. Des Moines still chasing us, so I just start working on him now. Once again, you can see the slow arcs. He has a really fast reload, but the slow arcs makes it pretty hard for him to consistently land shells on you. And of course, with the DPM on this ship, you can burn him quite effectively. He gave broadside, so I switched to AP. He's angling, so I switched back to HE again. New Orleans is honestly a bigger threat right now, mostly because New Orleans shell arcs are actually better than the Des Moines shell arcs. Of course, the closer we get, the bigger of a threat the Des Moines is. I know he's used his radar, so I slow down and I pop my smoke. This is of course why you run Superintendent in this build, to be able to smoke up more. The New Orleans could push in a radar, but the New Orleans radar range is of course much shorter. And you can see even without IFHE just how much damage this HE does, even without starting fires. He's got unrepairable fire on him. I start working on the New Orleans instead. Is he gonna radar me? He is within range now, so he could radar. So I'm constantly ready. And of course you have an additional speed boost, so I can pop that speed boost as well. I'm honestly just sitting here waiting to see if his radar's gonna pop. There we go, he pops his radar. That's my sign to full accelerate. Pop my speed boost and just start speeding away. He repaired the first fire. I'm gonna see if I can get a second fire on him. There we go, second fire. And I switch to AP because he's giving so much broadside. Oh, he decides to angle. That's unfortunate. So I'm just gonna honestly keep to HE and start working on him. And that's the thing though, with the Superintendent. You want those additional, you want to kind of force out radars. Because if you do get radared in this ship, as long as it doesn't happen when they're too close, but in this case I knew where he was at all times, so it wasn't the end of the world if he radared me, because I can just start kiting him away. And of course the Kaba is exceptionally good at kiting ships. This New Orleans, he has such a hard time consistently hitting me because of how fast I am, whereas the DPM that I pump out with this ship is insane. The reason I don't really use Adrenaline Rush, because in order to gain the benefits of demolition, wow, really Montana secondary still then. In order to gain the benefits that I have right now, I would only have gotten it right now, basically. First of all, you don't gain the demolition expert benefits, you only gain the basic firing training benefits, BFT benefits. So it would have taken me this long to actually get them, because now I'm at half HP, so this is where I would have gotten the adrenaline rage benefits. And purpose of this build is, unlike the other DD builds that tend to ramp up later on, where adrenaline rage kicks in, and that's when your damage goes up and that's when your efficiency goes up. The purpose of this Kaba build is that you are at 100% right from the start. You are at your most powerful at the very start of the game, and that won't change. And because you don't have a survivability expert, you instead have an additional smoke, so you can use to give you that additional survivability you might be losing out. And of course, smokes in general have more utility. Große Kurfürst, I made sure I stopped firing for a second there so I got undetected because I got so low, and this is of course where having additional smokes is really useful. I can burn down this Kurfürst. You see 2 fires already. He repaired the fire I got him in earlier. There is very little he can do in this situation. They are really focused on killing me and this Montana, it seems, which is not very intelligent for them. But it will allow my team, who has been quite slow on doing anything, you see how far behind my team is on points, this allows my team to catch up significantly. Fire instantly on the Yamato, not surprising. Once again, this build actually has, when you run flags and demolition expert on this build, you have 11% fire chance. And with basic firing training on these guns, and of course I use the reload module on the guns as well, you have a 4-second reload on this gun. So every single shell you see has an 11% chance of starting a fire. So it's not exactly surprising that you start a significant amount of fires. Now this is a bit of a problem here. Of course, now when I really need fires, I'm not gonna get them, right? This Rune, the only reason Rune would rush me like this is because he has Hydra. The problem is I can't really leave this smoke because I have no hiding place, nowhere to go. I will get spotted, so my only chance is hoping to burn him down before he catches up to me. But my RNG isn't good enough. I think I'm going to die here. I don't think there's much I can do. I do get a second fire after he repaired, so a bit more damage, and he should probably be dead to that. If he doesn't have a heal, he should be dead to that. He's still taking away on the fire, but you saw how much effort and how much resources they ultimately dedicated to getting rid of us. And I chose this game because, well, ultimately pretty nasty game considering I was fighting 2 radar cruisers, which is less than optimal for a Khabarovsk, and of course they had a carrier. So the Rune does burn to death and explode right there. The game ends, well, sometime after this. No point watching since I'm no longer in the game. Looking at the score, we can see 724k credits, but that's mostly because I run the Gamescom camo. More interesting is of course the damage, 227k damage, 23 fires, Wither and Arsonist, two rewards you get quite often in the Kaba. Looking at base XP, only 2.2k because, well, I didn't really defend a single cap, I didn't get a single cap. The only thing I did was deal damage to my enemies. Moving on to detailed report, we can of course see HE damage, 89k, AP very little. This is pretty rare. Usually you get more AP damage, but it kind of depends on the situation. But as I've said before, Kaba AP is very, very powerful. More importantly though, fire damage, a pretty staggering 137,000. That's more than a double Wither worth of damage right there. And considering I was only in the game for 12 minutes and 12 seconds, dealing this much damage is certainly quite impressive. And one of the reasons why I really, really like this build, and why I have ultimately decided that this is the build I want to recommend to you, my viewers. Anyway, let's move on to the build itself since I've been hyping it up here. Right, starting off with modules. First things first, I use the 10km torps because I don't think the 6km torps are worth it. If you really need to YOLO someone, you have 10 of these torps anyways, so there's really little point to go for those heavy damaging 6km ones. The 10km ones offer much more utility. One additional smoke from premium. I use all premium consumables, but if you have to use one, get premium smoke. Main armaments mod 1, aiming systems mod 1, there's really no other one that's even worth it, so it's by far the best one. Faster reload on the main guns, they are absolutely your bread and butter, no other one even considerably worth it. No engine loss, rudder shift to get it down to 4.9, since your turning circle is already so bad, and finally stealth. Captain perks wise, preventive maintenance, you don't want to be losing turrets, engine, anything. Last stand of course, and here is where the name 4x3 comes from. as opposed to the old 3x4. We get basic firing training, we get superintendent, we get demolition expert, and we get vigilance. And there's a really nice synergy between all of these perks, of course, if you look at it, and AFT from tier 4 to that additional gun range. If you have to take it in a priority, you go last stand, basic firing training, advanced firing training. After that, I would probably get superintendent, demolition expert, and finally vigilance with the last points. But there's a really nice synergy going on here, like basic firing training and demolition expert synergize really well. Superintendent and vigilance synergize really well. So there's this cohesive element to this build that I really like, that every single perk synergizes with each other, and it's been really effective. You can see there, of course, the gunfire chance 11% as shown in my commentary. Very effective. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later.